Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John. Joining me on this, well, it's not really hot, but it is very tropical and muggy at the moment. But joining me on this very tropical, muggy day are my good mates, Sixties and Clint. Fellas, I'm sitting here sweating in the damp conditions. How are you guys holding up?
Mate, I'm doing not too bad. At the start of the week, I was collecting animals 2 by 2. The torrential rain that was coming down in northwestern Sydney was absolutely unbelievable. But apart from that, I've been binge watching a great Australian series on Netflix, Boy Swallows Universe. And if you haven't had a chance to catch it, it's just absolutely brilliant. You got legend actors, Australian actors like Brian Brown and Anthony LaPaglia and Simon Baker, and then the rest of the cast is just brilliant. And can I say the young blokes that are in the lead roles in that are just sensational. But it's a great storyline. It's a gripping storyline. It's not for kids. It's not like what you call family viewing. And interestingly, the family in this particular story are Parramatta supporters. And it's a great.
I take it this
great
TV show is a
series
tragedy then.
Yes, yeah. It's look, it's
A dramatic tragedy, Shakespearean perhaps.
yeah. Well, it's actually set in 1985. So, in one of the episodes, they're watching a semi-final against the Bulldogs and wearing their Eels scarves. So,
nice.
but it's set in Brisbane. So they're actually up there in Brisbane, but Eels supporters up there. And as I said, look, it's a tremendous series. If you're looking not just for something to binge watch, but just a really good Aussie drama. And the script, mate, it's just so authentically Australian, and it's based on a novel that of the same name that was written by Trent Dalton. And let's just say that I've gone about this back to front. I'm now going to go out and read the book after watching the Netflix series. So there's a recommendation for people. It's great drama. Clint, what have you been up to, mate?
Well, you've been in the midst of a TV series. I feel like I've been reliving a particular movie on replay for the last little bit, and that'd be the Hugh Grant-led 4 Weddings and a Funeral, because it still remains wedding season amongst my intimate friendship group that I've grown up with. And we had a Bucks on the weekend, and anyone who has been out to Moore Park might be aware of the go-karting track that exists in the car park at the top of the entertainment centre in that precinct there. I tell you what, boys, at 6'3" and over 90 kilos, I think I'm about 92, 93 at the moment, getting into a go-kart isn't my cup of tea. On top of that, being rear-ended by I think it might have been some other guys on a Bucks who were very much treating go-karting as dodge, and wasn't that great either. So we got a nice big juicy bruise right across my vertebrae at the moment. So I was absolutely nursing that and licking my wounds on the Sunday following. But other than that, fantastic.
It's funny you say that.
There's nothing like Bucks weekends and activities around weddings just to add the bumps and bruises. If not sore heads.
I'll be honest with you, gents. I can't wait to see the end of it.
Alrighty, and if our personal anecdotes out of the way, I hope you all enjoyed them. But as always, quick shout out to the sponsors of the show: Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, NRL and Parramatta. Another year, and they're still doing great things for us. 60s, I'll throw it over to you in just one sec.
News team, assemble!
Well, fellas, just to kick things off, I hope all the people out there with families that have young boys or girls playing rugby league have been paying attention to this great junior Aussie boot swap that's happening through Parramatta Leagues Club and the associated clubs at Vikings and also up at Dural Country Club. On the 25th of January, they've got the culmination of this particular great Aussie boot swap. Parramatta Leagues Club out there in the activation area, out in the car park there, from 3 to 6 p.m. Bring in your old boots that you've grown out of, kids. Swap it for a larger size. So it means not only is it more affordable, but it's cutting down on waste as well. There's prizes that are available. I think there's a grand prize as well that you can enter into that they're calling the Golden Boot Prize that gets a signed jersey and a family pass to round one. But there's lots of other activities, meeting current and past players, the legends down there. You can win the boots of current players. They got lots of games. Alive 90.5 FM are going to be out down there with an outside broadcast. There's a sausage sizzle. There's all sorts of activities on there. So that's the day before Australia Day. That's Thursday the 25th between 3 and 6 p.m. If you can't get there on that day, then there are collection bins for your old boots outside Vikings, outside Dural Country Club, Parramatta Leagues Club, and also you can drop it in at Eels HQ up at Kellyville. So, fellas, that's a really good initiative, isn't it? The boot
Brilliant.
swap, making things more affordable for families.
Yeah,
You go ahead, 40.
I was going to say, getting that door as much ajar as possible to any young kid, boy or girl, that wants to get in and play rugby league is massive. So, footy boots are something often when you have a young boy or girl in the midst of those growth spurts, one season it's one and done with those boots because by the time next year rolls around, they need a new set. So they've got minimal tread on them. They're still not new, but as good as new, and giving them a home to someone else that can get their feet wet, quite literally in the game here, and get right into it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's the thing is how quickly you grow out of boots, out of shoes when you're growing up.
It's closing the gap, it's and it's giving something back to the community, you're creating these opportunities and allowing people maybe who, particularly as we talk through a period of time in history right now where the cost of living is significantly impacting everybody, but in particular young families. It's just allowing them that opportunity and to, because one of the first things that goes is people's discretionary spend and leisure activities.
Yep.
And it's preventing that from, or at least attempting to prevent that from being a hurdle for people, and saying that there is an alternative option here. You don't have to go down and buy brand new boots, and and particularly as you guys just cited with boots maybe only lasting a season. I know as a youngster, my feet grew every single year. I'm not sure if it's the same for you guys, but new boots were an absolute requirement to keep playing and participating in sport and just participating in footy. So, it's wonderful that this initiative has been, I guess, formalized, because there's always been informal ones that would take place at a local level, maybe with a club, and depend on the local club secretary. But the Eels as the I guess as the leader within the district and the parent to all of these junior clubs, formalizing this initiative, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, big tick for the Eels and especially Parramatta Leagues Club for getting this whole thing organised. Now, the next bit of news coming out of Eels territory, as last week, the end of last week, we had it announced that Ned's Milk had come on board as the training shirt sponsor, and that all traces back to the owner of Ned's Milk, Ned Brockman, being a huge Eels supporter himself. But he's an absolute champion of a bloke. Well, I mean, what do you fellas know about Ned Brockman? I've just been reading a bit about him and his marathon running and raising money for the homeless. Either of you two fellas know anything more about Ned?
No, I wasn't familiar. I got to be honest.
Yeah, as of a week ago, up until as recent as a week ago, I knew absolutely nothing, and you just said every little thing that I did know.
Well, what I'm going to suggest to people, because I knew that this bloke was a marathon runner. He ran across Australia, raising money for the homeless, and started this milk company, and especially with the chalky milk. But I think he's got some other flavours there, and he's quite active on social media. Puts up posts of getting deliveries of the milk out to tradies on site, and just having a lot of fun as he's getting the chocolate milk out there. But it's all for a good cause. It's all about raising money for the homeless, and it's available in Ned's Milk's available in supermarkets. So get behind one of the Eels sponsors, who's not just a sponsor of the Eels, but they're a real community-minded sponsor in Ned's Milk. So get out there, give it a try. We saw the players and BA sampling the milk. They've given it the huge thumbs up. So get out there, try it yourself. And if you buy your chalky milk, if you like your chalky milk, get it out there. I know it's available at Woolworths for a start. So, help them raise a bit of money for the homeless, as well as supporting another Eels supporter who's in that process of making it all possible. Fellas, junior rep trials. Now, they're continuing this week out at Windsor, taking on the Panthers, I believe it is. And but last Saturday, the matches were on at Cabramatta, Eels versus the Bulldogs. Really sapping conditions out there. Fellas, I was a bit crook, so I wasn't able to get out there, but we had friend of the throw, Para Through and Through, who got out there, and he was sending through score updates for us to put on TCT. And just running through the scores, 7-all in the Lisa Fiaola, 2-all in the Tasha Gale. In the Harold Matts, the Dogs prevailed 9-5. And in the SG Ball, the Dogs prevailed 5-2. Now, we all know what happens in trials and players being run on and off, and the squads now all get trimmed down to the number that they'll use for the season. Anything you'd like to add, Clint, about anything you've heard about the trial results, or your thoughts on trials football? Because you've been down this path before, being in the pathway system a lifetime ago, let's say, mate. But you've been in the pathway system yourself. What can you add for us?
I know for Dad out there, he was absolutely surprised by the size of some of the Bulldogs forwards that were brought on, both in the mats and the ball. So much so that and it probably just goes to show the evolution of the athlete that's coming through these days. The old, what do they feed them? Because he goes, physically they looked ready, NRL ready. Some of the Dogs players that were out there. So.
In terms of their physicality, you mean?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, there was that was something that Dad noted and stuck with me with what he shared, because much like yourself, Craig. I wasn't out there for different reasons. We obviously spoke about that at the start of the show, but very trying conditions, and it was those big boys in the Dogs that sort of helped them prevail, I think, in both those grades, both Mats and Ball, late in those matches. They were somewhat relatively well-balanced games before that had happened.
Yes. I when the feedback that I was getting was as the teams were starting to run other players on, that the Dogs seemed to get somewhat larger in size that were being put onto the field, and that they really had quite the dominance then once the size factor kicked in. So, but it was looking as well then at the girls' games. They were fairly evenly matched there. Obviously, we had a couple of draws there in the matches. So now, off the top of my head, and I'd have to double check this, but I think the girls are playing Friday night at Windsor, and the boys are playing Saturday. But that's, don't take that as gospel, people, because I haven't had any confirmation about times or anything like that for the junior reps this weekend. But that was how it was organised last year. And the early mail I had was that it was going to be organised similarly this year, but it may end up being a little bit different. So, yeah, just stand by and look for any information that's put out by the Eels. And especially during this time of the year, follow the Parramatta Junior Rugby League Instagram site. You get a lot of updates about the junior reps on the Parramatta Junior Rugby League Instagram site, so make sure you follow that. John, anything you'd like to add about what you have to be aware of with junior representative trial matches before their season even starts?
I mean, you mentioned the volatility there, 60s. They're running out essentially 2, 3, even 4 different major combinations of teams, and guys coming in and out regularly, and you tend to weight results based on the quarter of a half rather than the entirety of the game, because who's playing the second half can be a massive difference in like a second string versus fourth string or something like that. So obviously you don't want to be getting pantsed, but if you get a loss on the record, it's nothing to be too worried about, because what the coaches are looking for and what the players are getting out of it can transition significantly into a different result come round one.
Yeah, and also when you've got matches that are being played in quarters with players being trotted on and off, you're not going to see too much of fatigue factors kicking in. You're not going to see whether, as much as what you'd see during the season proper about playing under pressure or playing under fatigue. So all of those sorts of things you see less of in a trial, where they're basically trying to give as many players a bit of a run as possible. And as I said, there'll be the cuts would have been made after last weekend. So I'm expecting that trial matches this weekend will feature the obviously the trimmed down squads, and you get a little bit more of an idea about what's going on. Okay, pushing on, fellas. Not quite as much to report from training this week, because I mentioned earlier that I was collecting animals 2 by 2 on Monday, and those Kellyville fields, they were just flooded out, and it really wasn't possible for the Eels to get out there and train in the deluge that was happening on Monday morning here in the Hills District. I think it was reported in the news how many millimetres fell during the morning. All I can say to you is it was coming down like sheets of water. And, there was no way they were going to get any training done on Monday. And, in fact, the Eels media posted photos of the session that was held inside the gym instead. Now, it's quite a sizable gym, so they obviously cleared a bit of space, and they were doing a little bit more than just weight session in there. There's a bit of contact work that was done, a bit of ball work that was done. So it was, although it's not ideal, it was better than being out there. And I guess under those conditions, not only are you going to damage the field, but you can probably be a risk factor anyway of having some injuries, I would think. And really that sort of gets us up to date. I was at today's session, and I'll tell you what, I'll just leave that for my write-up. So if people want to know what happened at today's session, you can read the training report that I'll put up later on Wednesday night. John, it's your time, mate.
Yeah,
time to shine.
This week we're going with a YouTube creator called Yuri Wong, who samples movies and TV shows and creates fun little songs and whatnot out of it. So let's see what he's got up his sleeve this week.
Me, I know who I am. I'm a
if you can
John, I have this image of, say, one of our listeners that's got the podcast running, and they've just been distracted for a moment. They've gone maybe to go and grab a drink or something like that, and they've come back, and that's playing. Surely you're going to create some extreme confusion with that one. I don't know what to say.
Is that not Tropic Thunder?
That is indeed Tropic Thunder, yes. Robert Downey Jr.'s character
Robert
being
Downey
sampled,
Jr.?
yeah.
Yeah.
When he's having his existential crisis towards the back end of the movie.
That's
So,
right. Yeah. I thought yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
Yuri does a great job finding fun little bits to sample from various movies and TV shows, and then using some rather nifty tools, which I don't even know how they manage to make it work, but they create these funky little tracks and bass lines and bring it all together to create a little song. So it's a very interesting...
Well, can I just say, mate, there is a magic segue that's there, because I went from talking about a tropical rainstorm and then
Thunder.
you come in with Tropic Thunder music. Oh, okay. You never fail to keep me. You never fail to keep me guessing with these. But Clint, I'm amazed. You're really zoned in. You're tuned into 40s musical tastes here.
If you could physically see me, I went into the position of the thinking man. And then my eyes and my head tilted up. I'm just like, I know that voice, and it's only because I've watched Tropic Thunder somewhat recently that it spurned on me. So let's call that recency bias.
So
okay.
What was it?
Well done, mate.
The greatest true fake documentary of a fake war movie ever made, or something like that.
Wasn't Tom Cruise's cameo in that movie fantastic?
Yes, it was an all-timer right there.
I'm looking forward to what you come up with next week, mate. That's that. As I said, that stumped me, but Clint, congratulations. Looking forward to next week. Okay, boys, NRL news now. Let's kick it off with the Parramatta connection. Waqa Blake, he's found a new home, 40.
Yeah, not rugby union like everyone's sort of thought based on what the the news insiders were telling us, but instead he's off to the Super League, where he'll join St Helens for a single-year contract, and he'll be playing in the centres for the red and white.
How do you think he'll go, Clint?
Look, it's the opportunity there is for him to really, really exceed over there. The thing that's going to be obviously come into question is, and there's no other way of saying this, but he finished his tenure at the Eels with a serious case of the yips. And it's about whether he's overcome that. For him, the physical side of the game is all there for him. It's just about what's happened between the years and whether he's been able to, maybe a change of scenery and getting away from the NRL. He has the opportunity to reestablish himself, and if he does so, he has the makings of being a real success over there. And if he does, I think the St Helens fans will take to him quite warmly, and they'll be willing to accept some of the bad that might come along with that good with Waqa. But there's that caveat on that question whether he's overcome that. For his sake, I hope so, because he was obviously a very well liked player here. Obviously didn't quite hit the heights that all of us may have hoped that he'd hit in Parramatta colours, but on his day, he's as devastating a ball runner as there is. And electrifyingly fast. A real athlete in the true sense of the word. So I really hope that he succeeds over there. He's 29, so he still has a couple of years of professional rugby league ahead of him if he's good enough to take the opportunity over there. But I wish him the best of luck and really hope he makes a fist of it.
Well, even though his harshest critics will be pointing towards his end of tenure at the Eels, and by end of tenure, we're probably talking about a little bit more than the last 12 months. But when you look at what his best was and what an athlete he is, you realise that a lot of what's happened has been up in the head space, And if he can get that headspace, that self-confidence, that self-belief happening, then, yeah, he should have a good time over there in the Super League. 40, it's official. Melbourne, the Tigers, they've got it done.
It's like a bad plot on Neighbours or Home and Away. It's been dragged out for almost like seasons here, but it's finally been resolved. And, Justin Olam and Sean Blore have officially swapped clubs. Olam is now a West Tiger and Blore a Melbourne Storm or Stormonian, I don't know what you call them. And finally it's been milked and dragged and rehashed, and like I said, like a bad soap opera plot line here. And thankfully, it's now done.
Telenovela.
We can move on because, frankly, it's in terms of NRL transactions, it's a drop in the water. It's nothing major, but it's just been pulled on for so long.
And topical.
And look, Blore. I think Blore is, is a bit of a, as they call in the NFL, a jag, just a guy who can get through his minutes in the back row. But Olam has been devastating in the past, but was essentially exiled by Craig Bellamy most recently in 2023. So makes you wonder what's going on there. When he did come back in the back end of the season, it was pretty awful. So if he's back to his best, obviously the Tigers will be very happy, but there's always that little caveat about, signing players in the Melbourne Storm, even when they're at the peak of their powers. And here we see Olam, who is seemingly fallen off a cliff, and I don't know what he's going to be able to produce for the Western Sydney joint venture.
I
Clint,
personally think...
Who benefits? I was just going to say, who benefits?
Take the words out of my mouth. I think I was about to answer the question before you'd stipulated it. Look, I personally think Melbourne's come out on top on this deal. And the reason for that is because not only, as 40 has just cited, whether Olam returning back to the Melbourne setup or back into the team far from his best. On top of that, he's never been noted as a brilliant defender. I think he's been a sound defender in a good system who's had his defensive lapses, which is only going to be put further under the microscope in the West Tigers system, where I can't remember. I think he plays left centre generally, Olam. So that would put him... Yeah,
because he matched up against Will Penasini in the past, so left centre, I believe.
So he would be on the edge with Isaiah Papali'i at present, and whichever of Aiden Caesar and Jaden Sullivan is playing on the left edge. Isaiah obviously was a fantastic player for us, but certainly had his defensive lapses or momentary defensive lapses as well. It's been a known problem for the Tigers for quite some time, and it didn't, despite getting Isaiah and John Bateman, their edge defense didn't improve all that much last year either. I kind of look at it and go, I'm not seeing the holes being plugged on that side. It feels like a very much a recruitment for, again, one side of the footy, and I do think he'll add a little bit to them in attack, sure. Particularly because I personally believe under Benji Marshall they're going to go adopt the mentality of, we might concede 30, but we're going to try and put 34 on you. So I think he can be a contributor in that regard. But I think Blore, who is younger, about 5-6 years younger than Justin Olam, going into that Melbourne system, he just seems, you said yourself, what he doesn't seem like it's that big of a signing, but it's exactly the type of signing that Craig Bellamy in the past has been able to extrapolate a little bit more out of. And, I think we'll see Sean Blore develop into a regular first grader. And by virtue of being in that Melbourne system and a successful competitive side, start to be probably spoken about in much more favourable light than he has been previously, and probably get to a point where commentators are, through the Melbourne bias, overrating him even. But, I think Melbourne have come out on top in this deal.
Yeah, and I always pay attention to a Bellamy signing that looks like it's been really targeted. Not that any signing isn't targeted, but you just feel like, as you said, Clint, that he's the sort of player that they like to get into their system.
Mm.
And we've seen splashes of him in his career so far, but not enough consistency. However, we know there's a bit of potential there. So, yeah, watch this space. But it's beautiful to still have the Tigers featuring in our news segment. And another club that continues to feature in our news segment, 40, the Dogs. And they're still in the player market, mate.
Yeah, and they're constantly churning and burning that midnight oil. And this time they're looking to poach a contracted Rooster in Terrell May. So the older brother, I believe, the oldest brother of the trio of May boys, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but he plays prop forward and has been a real powerhouse in reserve grade across the last couple of years and seen some playing time in the NRL on the back of that. And obviously the Dogs, who are looking to rebuild that forward pack that's been somewhat disappointing. I think fairly disappointing is probably the right way of putting it. They've identified him as one of the key men to rebuild their pack with.
And the wonder kid coach, Cameron Ciraldo, he's obviously doesn't mind getting a player that he knows a little bit about. Clint, is it an earth-shaking signature if they were to get him? Is it indicative of their processes there of just grab whoever they can and then work it out later?
Look, it can be viewed through that lens. I think as well the fact that Terrell May has put out there in the world that he's openly going to a club that could have him and his two other brothers there might be the undertone to this story. And you'd imagine that the Dogs, who don't mind buying a centre or seven, obviously have their eyes on Isaac Tongo. Not Isaac Tongo. Forgive me, I've forgotten his name. The Talon May.
Yes.
Confused the two.
Yep.
And then obviously Tyrone, who after winning I think he played in the 2020 loss grand final and went over to the Super League after that. It may have been in the 21 grand final, I can't remember. But it might be a case of uniting the brothers under one club. So I think there's a little bit of that undertone to this story. And does he improve their squad? Absolutely. Does he move the needle significantly? I don't think so. Not at this point, at least.
Yep. Okay. Well, now just moving away from the NRL player market to the NRLW, and there's obviously not quite as much news about NRLW player market, given that we're a significant period of time away from their season kickoff. But we've had a bit of news coming out of the Sharks 40.
Yeah, they've re-signed one of their marquee players. Emma Tonagato will be a Cronulla Shark until the end of 2026 with her 2-year extension there in the Shire. Obviously one of their sort of key players and a player that they've had a fair bit of versatility in terms of where they can deploy her. She made her name as a fullback, but I believe she moved into the halves most recent season with the emergence of their young flyer at fullback, whose name eludes me. But obviously a very good signing. Whenever you can ink a long-term extension for one of your marquee or core players, you get it done. And the Sharks, who looked like a pretty good outfit in season 2023, are probably going to improve, you'd think, on the back of solid recruitment and retention.
And now, Clint, we can start to use that other R word that always goes with the recruitment, as 40 just said there, retention. Retention was certainly a hard task to follow or to get done in the previous iterations of the NRLW, with players continually being free agents and not being able to be signed to long-term deals. They can now be signed to long-term deals. Clubs can start to have their roster I don't know if the word history is there, but there's certainly a bit of stability about them and build a roster rather than having flashes of rosters from year to year. So that's a new stage in the development of the NRLW, Clint.
Yeah, absolutely. And it allows the fans as well to have players that can get behind. And obviously in the first couple of years and up until as recent as this season just passed, prior to the multi-year deals being in place, you're always questioning, is she returning to the team next year? We don't know. Whereas like now there's I guess if you want to call them as such, franchise players for each of the clubs, and Sonagato is an example of one for the Sharks, as is the likes of the Sherrington sisters for the Eels. So, it's good because it allows the fans to develop that connection with some of their players as they've done in the men's, and also allow the teams themselves to build their own identities.
Fellas, I know it's not on our run sheet, and we'll talk about it in depth next week as a result, but the NRL has introduced significant changes to all kick-based restarts moving forwards for season 2024 and beyond. Essentially, any kickoff that goes out, whether it's line drop out, kickoff restart, etc., 20-metre restart on those optional restarts, as rare as they may be, anything that goes out on the full now is no longer a penalty, and will instead be a play the ball for the receiving team should the infringement occur. So obviously a pretty significant change to the meta game for rugby league, and it's driven what we think by a need for, or not a need, but a desire for more contests to the ball. So we'll have to wait and see how it is. And we'll talk about it in depth more next week when we've had a bit more of a chance to prepare. Just getting that one in there for one of our shorter episodes. I know we have to wrap up soon.
Okay, fellas. Well, that just about brings us to the end of our podcast for this week. Once again, our thanks to Big Swing Golf Northmead for getting behind us and to make all of this possible. Get down there if you're a golf fanatic, but even if you're not a golf fanatic, if you enjoy participating in the brilliant range of simulated games they've got down there, whether you go down with your mates, with your work colleagues, with your family, organised as a party or just an after-work function, whatever, get down there, enjoy it. We've also got to thank Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. They've been with us almost since day dot. A huge thanks to them as well. John, Clint, you've done well again this week. My thanks to you. Thank you to all of our listeners who loyally tune in every week to our podcast. We appreciate that. Appreciate all the feedback that you give us. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.